Okay, so this is my father's 1970 Massey Ferguson 135. Really reliable tractor, but it has a habit of taking a big crap, I'll use some good language there, big crap on us when we really need it. Like a couple of years ago, it would have been now, we got it bogged and the starter motor failed on it. So yeah, that was the end of that. Now it has decided to give us another run around when we really need it, because obviously it's summer, so everyone's mowing, everyone's slashing. We need this to be able to slash all around. So yeah, and the dynamo has decided to give us some problems. It still charges, well, I believe it still charges. Last time I checked it, it was charging fine, but it has started developing some really abnormal and worrying noises. So not sure what's going on there. It sounds like a bearing or a bush. I'm not sure what's in these. I'm pretty sure, well, I know the end cap has a bush, but I'm not sure what the actual, this housing here's got. I think it's either, I think it's a bearing in the front housing. It's been a while since I've taken one of these old C40s apart. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a trip down memory lane. But yeah, so I thought I probably should give you a bit of an idea of what sounds it's making now. So I'll move my toolbox down here and I'll start it up and show you what I mean. Rightio, here goes. Haven't got any noises right at now. Can't hear it, but I can definitely feel it in the dynamo. It's like very on and off. It feels like something's like scraping in there. It's like yesterday was like really easily heard, but today it's not, but I can definitely feel it. Yeah, we'll pull it off and we'll have a look inside of it, because I haven't actually pulled this one off or cleaned it. Most of the other tractors we've got another two. We've got obviously the Nuffield over there, and we got another one in there. Both of them have dynamos, and I've pulled both of the dynamos apart on those tractors, but this one I have not yet pulled apart. So today's one of the first time I actually see what it's like inside of it. But yeah, we'll get it nicked off and we'll take it into the workshop and open it up and see what's going on. Okay, so I got it partly everything out of it. So I'll just undo these last couple of bolts. This one holding it from losing tension. So yeah, just pull it out. Not exactly sure where it's going, what it holds onto, whether it's actually got a nut or something that holds it in. There we go. Okay, so that's good. That one just comes in. So I think that holds not only our dynamo but also our little fan shroud, because the dynamo, well, I assume this one has one, should have one, or not. This one has no fan. So some dynamos on that pulley, I'll show you when we get over the shed, they have a little fan on them. I'm not sure whether the Nuffield has a fan on its dynamo, but yeah, some dynamos do and some dynamos don't. Every single alternator will have a fan on, from what I've seen. Next thing I've got to do is loosen. Oh, it's already loose, which is great. Just take this nut out of here, holding the rest of the shroud on, as well as the dynamo. There we go. So that's our shroud. The dynamo should just come off once I take this fan belt out, and also these connectors. There we go. Now it should just come off like that. Ooh, have a listen to that. So take it over the shed and we'll pull it apart. Right, so we've got our dynamo up at the workshop now. We've got it on a little sheet. Overall, I've cleaned it up a little bit, as you can see. Yeah, not looking too bad. See what I mean about it not having a fan. If it had a fan, it would have little fins out the back of this pulley here, but it doesn't. But yeah. Now, yeah, as I showed you before, it doesn't exactly sound the best, and it has a lot of play by the feels. Just hold that. A lot of play at the rear bush. Lucky for me though, we have a spare dynamo, so if anything's severely buggered, I'll just be able to take parts off of that one. Rightio, so the first step to getting this dyno apart is to take off of the whole assembly our end cover. So that's this little part here. So it's just two flathead screws holding this in. So holy Jesus, tight as. Comes a time when you have to use one of these too. Might utilise that today. Holy. I think it's moving. There we go. Righty, so we got one of these stupid screws to finally come loose. At last. Right, so there's one of our screws. Another one of our screws, and overall it's not looking pretty. There's a bit of crap on these, and usually that's a telltale for whether you're in for a good dynamo or one that's full of crap. And this one looks, to me, judging by those bolts, it's going to be full of crap. I'll let you see the big reveal. There we go. So there's our end cap, which the bush definitely looks very flogged out, unfortunately. And ooh, that's not good. Doesn't look very clean in there. Alright, not a worry. Just have to clean that out. Bit of emery tape or sandpaper will do. And yeah, we'll get down to exactly what's going on with it. Kind of looks as though our brushes are a little bit worn out as well, judging by what them looks like. Anyway, let's get to it. Right, so we've got it all apart, and I have been looking at it. As I said, that bush is flogged out, but I also pulled the brushes off, and they are like seriously worn down. So we're probably gonna have to put a kit in this dynamo, unfortunately, but it's all right. But nonetheless, the front bearing here actually feels pretty solid, remarkably, because that one is like completely flogged out, but this one, it is actually, not gonna lie, pretty damn solid. So I reckon that one will be fine for now. But yeah, it's very lucky because I have never actually had to pull apart one of these pulleys before, and I believe they're pretty challenging to get off. So yeah, just lucky for me, I don't have to pull that bearing out. But nonetheless, while we're here, we may as well clean it up ready, because we will be obviously waiting on parts for it. But yeah. Rightio, so for this dynamo, our kit has turned up. I've put the bush, which is supposed to go in our rear housing, in the fridge, but for now what we're going to try and do is going to try and get this new bearing fitted. So first thing I have to do, grab my impact, and I'm just going to pull this bearing off. Oh, sorry, not the bearing, the pulley, and then we'll get the bearing out. So there goes our nut. Our washer, and then the pulley is on a keyway, as you can see. Alrighty, after a big fight, we managed to get the pulley off of the armature, and we also, well, Dad did, he got the bush out in a million pieces of this back housing, and I pulled the bearing out. So, the way it all worked, bring all the bits over. Obviously the pulley sits on a Woodruff key, which goes in this key slot here. It sits on there, so I just ended up putting the nut onto the top of the thread, tapping the armature out of the pulley whilst just holding it in my hand. That ended up coming out pretty easily. Well, not easily, it put up a bit of a fight, but it came out in the end, which is good. We have our bearing. There's a little C-clip here, which your bearing housing, your C-clip sits in there to hold your bearing from coming out, and then there's a spacer which sits around the front here and spaces your pulley from the bearing housing. That all fell out then. Something. See that swing there? Probably. But yeah, anyway, what we're going to do now, I've got the bush here. I think I said yesterday that I put it in the fridge. I actually put it in the freezer. Now the reason I did that, it's because obviously metal shrinks when it is cooled down. So what I did that for was so I could either just push it in with my finger, or we might be able to just get away with tapping it in. We won't have to press it in with the hydraulic press or anything. But yeah, I do have to soak it, as the bag says, so I'll put a bit of oil on that before we push it in. But yeah, that's what we'll be doing right now. Okay, so here's our bearing housing. Just take the bush out of its little bag. It is pretty cool at the moment. Should just press in with a little bit of, so there's a bit of oil. All we've got to do is just tap it in with the hammer. have to go this way. Where's that way? Alrighty, so we managed to get our bush in there pretty good. I've also put a bit of dry lubricant on there, just for now, whilst I'm getting everything ready. So next thing I want to do is I want to pull these brush sets off. So I'll grab a spinner for that. Yes, beautiful. So yeah, with a 1/4 inch screwdriver, all we've got to do is just loosen off our retaining screws. And pull the brushes off. There is washers here too, so if you are pulling this apart or pulling one apart yourself, watch out, because the little copper washers will fall out with them. Alright, there we go. So that's our brushes off. I'll give you a look at how worn down they are. So that's one side. I'll grab the kit because we'll need it up here. Right, so here's a kit. Put that bearing back in there for now. I'll pull both of our brushes out and I'll show you the difference. Okay. So we've got, this is probably the most worn down one compared to the new ones. So you can see there, the new ones have about half of the wear of, or the old one has about half of the wear of the new ones. So it was definitely due a new set of brushes. Next thing I'm going to do, pull our springs off, because we've got to clean up all of these copper mounts here. What we're going to do now, we have all of our gear for this whole front assembly. So we've obviously got our pulley spacer here, I was talking about before, as well as our C-clip, the Woodruff key, which I don't think I actually pointed out. That is our Woodruff key, so that sits in the keyway of this armature here. And then our pulley, obviously, the little bugger that gives all the problems. But yeah, what we're going to be focusing on, however, is our bearing, which this is a new one, and our housing. So I want to clean this housing up a little bit. So again, like all the stuff on here, just blow that out a little bit. I'm just going to use a bit of sandpaper or emery taper just to clean it up. What we're doing here is we're just going to put a little bit of oil around our outer race of the bearing, just so it slots into this housing nice. There we go. So what we've got to do, obviously, I'll have to centre this up. I'm not sure how centre it is. I think I went a little bit far. It looks pretty good. It's pretty good where it is. Move it that way. That's really bad. You just got to try and find the spot where it's like. That's actually really centered there. I think that's perfect. So what we'll do now is I'll set these up somewhere so you can watch it, but we'll just use the press to gradually push it in. Okay, let's have at it. I'll tighten our little valve up and we'll start pressing it in. 20-ton press is making very light work of this, this bearing. I've done a couple of bearings on this before, big ones. You remember the Fiat that we put the injection pump on? We did a full rebuild of the final drive on that, and the bearings in that, some of them were like that big. So you can imagine how big a bearing that this press can handle. There we go. I believe that bearing is now home. What we'll do is we'll relieve the pressure. Obviously tighten our valve back up. And take our dynamo out. And you'll see there that we have a lovely pressed bearing into our armature. Oh yeah, so we are back over here at our little workspace. So now we've got our pulley and all that sort of stuff mounted. We can get our little body, which we've cleaned all the field coils up in. Simply just find our little locating dowel. There's a little mark there, and on over here on our bearing housing you can see there's a dowel right there. So what we'll do is we'll slide our body over, line up our dowel, which we have. It's awesome. All we have to do after that is get our brush housing here, or our rear cover, and then this is the hard part, most tricky part of pulling apart and cleaning them. Obviously not pulling them back together, putting them back together or rebuilding them. Probably the bearing or the pulley is the most challenging thing. However, this is also quite a difficult task, is trying to put it all back together. So what we do, align our terminal there. Notice can see that we've got a little terminal which comes out of that little rectangular hole there. Got to line that up, and then what we have to do, our brushes here have to spread apart. Will have to be spread apart, I should say. And then we have to find the bush in here. And once they're spread apart enough to go over our commutator, what we can now do, once we've also located our terminal, is simply just put it all together. There we go. Might involve some turning, which is what I'm doing at the moment. Just trying to get it all together. So there we go. That's it. You just would have heard it click. So what we've got to do now is just put our retaining bolts back in, which sometimes it can be a bit tricky to find the threads for these. Sometimes they don't like going in. But these ones seem to have gone in all right. And all we have to do, thread them in, like so. There we are. Now we just check our dynamo spins over, which it does. It is a little bit tight, but I'm sure it will loosen up over time. Might shoot some oil into there quickly and see if that loosens things up a little bit. Then once I've done that, we'll take it over to our battery and I'll show you how to polarize it and also test the dynamo to make sure it works. Rightio, so the first check or test we're going to be doing is what I call the polarity check. Some people also call it flashing, or flashing the dynamo. Now this, what we're going to be doing here, basically is just a check that it's going to be charging the correct polarity. So a lot of people don't know, but unlike an alternator, a dynamo can charge either negative earth or positive earth. And because the tractor we're working on at the moment is charging negative earth at the moment, what we're going to be doing is we've hooked a negative lead to the earthing point of the dynamo to our negative terminal on the battery, which is sitting down here. We have a positive jumper cable, which is going from our positive terminal on the battery. Now, what we're going to do with it now, this is our little field terminal. I was talking about it before, you can see it right there. All we need to do is simply tap it on there and take it off. I don't know if you saw that, but you can see there's a little blue spark. Really, really strong spark, which is good. You want to do that a couple of times, and what that does is that basically just changes the dynamo from either negative earth to positive earth, or if you are currently on negative earth or positive earth and you want to make sure it's negative or positive earth, you just do it again. Just make sure it is going to the correct polarity. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to check that the motor spins. I don't know how much it will, because this battery hasn't been charged in a very long time, so it's probably half flat and the motor will probably just go. But because it is tight, because it has obviously new bushes and bearings, but this won't matter when it's on the tractor, it'll be spinning perfectly fine anyway. But as I said, we are going to be spinning as an electric motor. What I've done, as I said before, we've joined our dynamo terminal with a field terminal. We've got a jumper wire in between, and what this does is just basically turns it into a simple electric motor. So we'll see if it actually wants to spin. It might just create a whole heap of sparks, because as I said, it is very tight, because it is new. Well, it's got fresh bearings in it, so it may not turn as well as I want, but we'll give it a go anyway. Oh, there we go. Right, so it's passed both of the tests that we've given it. So what I will do is I still have to get a nut for this pulley. I haven't found one yet. The old one's a bit knackered, so I'm going to replace it. But as I said, yep, find a nut for that pulley and we'll pop it back on the tractor, because that dynamo works absolutely beautifully. Alrighty, so now we've got this dynamo here built. I did manage to find a nut for it. I do completely rethread the armature, because the old thread was just completely knackered, and the nut was a lost cause as well. So yeah, I just got the die on it, rethreaded the armature, and then put this nice new nut on there. So it should hold. I impacted it on so that it should hold, but I'll just keep an eye on it for the next couple of days that we use it. Yeah, just see how it goes and whether it breaks again. But yeah, as you can see, we'll put it back on now. We've pretty much done everything we need to it. Right, I remember how all this goes back together. I think the fan shroud went around there, or not. Yeah, must be going around there. Yeah, put the fan shroud on. I'll put this bolt through so we can at least support the dynamo. Now, with the dynamo, you may be familiar with the alternator. At the back they have their own separate regulator. However, a dynamo, the alternator has an inbuilt regulator, I should say. The alternator has a inbuilt regulator. The dynamo has a separate regulator box. Now, because I've put new brushes in it, I'm not entirely sure whether this will alter anything. So once we're finished here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the multimeter on the battery once it's all hooked up, and I'll double check that it's not either overcharging or undercharging. In that case, if it is, all we've got to do is just simply reset the regulator box settings. It's been a long time since I fiddle around with dynamos, so I'm just going to have to try and figure it out myself if I can. But oh well, that's all the game of mechanicking is about. So what I might do is I'll put you on time lapse, because this is probably going to take me a fair chunk of time to do. So have fun and enjoy me watching me struggle to get this bugger back on. Right, so our dynamo's fitted back up, nice and solid. Fan belt's not loose, but not tight either, so it's not going to snap on us. Now what we've got to do is just disconnect our battery leads, because I didn't mention it, but I did isolate this beforehand. You should always do that when you're working on machinery. This one doesn't have an isolator switch, so removing the battery leads is equally as good. Just stops someone from starting it up either when you're working on it, or even per se when you're obviously it's apart too. All right, so now we've got to do, obviously I said before we were going to start it up, get the multimeter and check the voltage before we do anything to that regulator box. But yeah, we'll start it up and see how it goes. Seems to be, I can't feel anything. Not getting hot either. Yeah, that's pretty good. Right, we'll check the voltage now. Alrighty guys, so part 2 might be in hand for the old 135. I believe the control box is at fault because we have a little bit of a problem. When I first started up, unfortunately I wasn't quick enough to get the camera, but I had the multimeter, I don't know where it is up there. I had it on the battery and it was reading 13.3 volts, which is not very much. And then when I got the camera ready finally, it was only reading about 12.9. So I shut tractor off, turned it back on again, and it still did the same thing. So control box is just sitting up in there. So I'm thinking I may have to pull it out and have a look at it. That, or we just buy a new one. They aren't that expensive. The one that this has, Nuffield's got the same of, and I think I bought a new one of them a couple of years back. And it's been very good. That tractor charges at around 14.2 to 14.8 volts usually. So yeah, it charges very good, that dynamo. But we do know that the dynamo is not the culprit on this, however, because the bench test as the electric motor, backfeeding the power through it, we know that for sure the dynamo is not the issue. So it has to be something with either the wiring or the control box, which sits up under the dash, as I said. So that'll be it for part 1 of that dynamo rebuild. So if you did like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because then you'll be able to see, if you do want to, see part 2 of the charging system sagas on this Massey Ferguson 135.